So about 2 weeks ago, I received a very interesting email. Now, it wasn't interesting in the sense that it was entertaining or whatnot. I came across an email that got sent to me, and it was including the Traders World magazine issue 19. And the reason why it was sent to me was because on page 118 they had a little thing about timing solutions, and that's a little bit of a software that I use here and there. And it was pretty much a one-page advert, so I didn't pay much attention to it. But I did see that there was a cosmoeconomics bit of a write-up here over several pages. And there was one that I was interested in. I'm going to share that with you today because this is going to be an update to our war cycle video that I did probably a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. And this is what I've been waiting for to show you. And I wanted to give you this from, so to speak, the horse's mouth, because have you ever heard of the or experienced the phenomena where you have such as a best friend or a husband or wife that is telling you, for example, it could be something about like how to lose weight, something simple as that. And you might be wondering what is the best solution to lose weight, and they simply tell you to exercise and eat healthy. You don't want to take their advice, you prefer to eat junk food or whatnot, so you don't take their advice. But for days, weeks, months, years, they tell you just got to eat healthy and exercise. And then you decide one day to possibly go to a seminar, listen to a motivational speaker, perhaps even listen to someone else on YouTube. And they tell you that you should be eating healthy and exercising if you want to lose weight. And you go, oh my God, why did I not think of that before? Or this is revolutionary. This is what I need to actually be healthy and lose weight, is to exercise and eat healthy, okay? So you got to eat the healthy foods, etc. And then you go to your wife and you go, or your friend or husband or whatever, and you go, I just figured out how to lose weight. I had to simply eat healthy and exercise. And then she turns around, or they turn around and they go back to you and they go, that's what I've been telling you for the last 6 months. That's what I've been telling you for X amount of time. Why didn't you just listen to me? But generally speaking, you need to hear it from someone else. And that's why I try to give you these forms of data points so that you can hear it, so to speak, from someone else, a different source, so that you can get that information into you. If you don't specifically want to hear it from me and you would need to hear it from somewhere else, that is what I want to share with you. So we're going to head down to page 29, 30, 31, 42, 50, 62, 62, just to go through it and just see where this document starts. I didn't really take the page number when right here. So it seems to be on page 43 and is a case for war and or revolution in 2026, 84-year war cycle, and it's by L. David Linksey, which is who we used in the last article, in the last video, from the Secret Science Institute, where we were looking at the 18.6-year cycle. Well, we're going to update this now. I've got the word from the horse's mouth, so to speak, and I really hope that this is going to possibly give you some enlightenment as to what I'm looking for or what we're potentially seeing in the near future. So just a bit of a forewarning. Yes, you need to have an open mind when you listen to this. This is going to be based on statistics and facts on a certain subtopic of cosmoeconomics, which is planetary movements. So if you're going to be watching this, please keep in mind that this is going to be slightly esoteric and you need to have an open mind, okay? With that all said, let's go into it. So David L. starts off, he says, most, if not all, cycles in nature and human events can be shown to have a high correlation to astronomical periodicities. Some propose they provide the cause and basis for the cyclical structures involved in all cycle research. I'm going to make this slightly bigger. Give me a second. Okay. As with anything, cycles cannot occur out of thin air and cannot exist without scientific foundation. Cycles must be based upon something since their very nature, they exist and are mathematically coherent. I wonder if I can highlight some of these. It can be shown that when specific astronomical cycles repeat, so do the same or similar events correlated to them. Okay, so astronomical cycles meaning pretty much the rotation of planets around the solar system. Below is a proposed case of potential and significant major conflicts for the United States in plus or minus 2026. This conflict can manifest itself as either internal, external, or a combination of the two. In most cases, wars do not simply start randomly one day. They build slowly over time and often brew for years, as we are potentially seeing now. The following will show a pattern of significant and major conflicts in American history within the framework of the 84-year cycle. Every 84 years, Mars and Uranus form an initial conjunction or come together and meet at almost the exact same celestial longitude in that part of the sky, astronomically known as Gemini. This is the foundation of the 84-year war cycle proposed and examined. Now, I just want to go a little bit on a slight tangent here. There's a lot of people that I know who are quote-unquote GAN traders who are very prominent in the industry. They're very successful. They made a lot of money. They follow the cycles and whatnot. And they have been telling me for several years now that they are pretty much reinvesting a lot of their spare cash to buy farmland, not for the purpose of growing cattle or whatnot, but for the purpose of going inland into Australia to potentially get away from the major cities should a war break out. And they're trying to have all their affairs in place by 2025, 2026 timeframe. So that way, if anything broke out, they can simply move inland and hopefully protect their family. I'm not suggesting you do some sort of doomsday prepper thing, but I'm just trying to give you all the information you can make your own decision what to do with your own life, whether something happens or not, okay? Forewarned is also forearmed. This is not the first time Uranus in Gemini has been recognized or called a war cycle, but to the writer's knowledge, it is the first time a timer has been entered into the equation, which is when Mars makes an initial conjunction with Uranus in Gemini. Actually, this guy here is very, very knowledgeable, and he's the one that taught me about the gold cycle and why I'm potentially looking for a low in gold in 2024. Okay, I'm not going to go into the astronomical reasons why, but he's really good at researching this sort of stuff, and it's possibly something you might want to look into his work. On January 24, 1692, the raid on York occurred. It is also known as the Candlesman Massacre, where about 200-300 natives were led into a town of York, known as the state of Maine, killing about 100 English settlers and taking about the same number of as hostages. Granted, we cannot consider this event alone, specifically due to the relativity limited populations in America at the time. About 200,000 plus of European descent is estimate. So let's move on. This event occurred within a much larger time frame of greater significance and conflict in America, known as the King William's War. This war was also known as the First Intercolonial War or Second Indian War, that raged from 1688 to 1697. With 1692 being the approximate midpoint between the beginning and the end of this conflict. This 1692 midpoint fits well into our model as the initial event anchor or starting point of this 84-year war cycle. For those not familiar with symbolism, with this astro symbolism, we see a symbolic representation of the planets involved in the correlation on this astronomical wheel below. Mars symbol being located around 630 position, while Uranus located around 7 position. Both reside in the sign of Gemini, whose symbol looks like a Romanian numeral 2. So Gemini looks like 2 essentially, and occupies the space from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock in the position of the astronomical wheel. Okay, the astronomical wheel was generated by a free program called Astrolog, which can be downloaded. So basically we have Gemini down here, and we have our 2 planets that we're looking at here. And on Astrolog, he's got New York, January 24th, 1962. It's a geocentric basis, and we have Mars and Uranus at these points around the wheel. Now just remember, for those, the wheel goes this way, and therefore each part of the wheel has 30 degrees in it. So 90 degrees would be here. So basically around 60 to 70 degrees is what we're looking at, which is around this point here in Gemini for the war cycle. But let's continue on. As you see from the data panel on the right-hand side, Mars and Uranus are separated by 10 degrees. On the date of 1962, Mars is located at 71, Uranus at 61 degrees, which is around here. Make note as well where the north node is located. The north node is the upside down horseshoe looking symbol located at the 10 o'clock position. So let's zoom out. We have the north node up here. And it's in the sign of Aquarius, okay? So it's like this water symbol. That's Aquarius there. Again, we use the planets and we use the zodiac as a timing system. And we look at when certain planets form certain aspects with each other, and that's what we're looking at. That's what's important. Which is a symbol of two stacked water-looking graphics, one on top of the other. The first chart is of the geocentric perspective of the planets, which means Earth-centered geo, and centric means center. So geocentric means Earth center. The geocentric perspective is indicated in the data panel to the right side of the astronomical wheel, which is located 8 lines below the very top. Geocentric, so he's looking at a geocentric wheel. Make note where Pluto is located for now, which is 117 degrees. Pluto's symbol looks like the chalice or goblet with a ball located in it, and is located around 5 o'clock in the position of the Cancer, which is represented by a sideways 69 sign. All right, so this is Pluto here. It's in the sign of Cancer as it moves into Leo. So it's quite towards the end of Cancer there. Let's move down. 84 and a half years later, or one complete cycle or revolution of the planet Uranus almost around our sun, we once again have Mars and Uranus located in Gemini. This time they are almost exactly conjunct. Conjunct or conjunction means the two planets or more nearly occupy the exact same celestial longitude. We'll see this in a second in an image, I guess. We see from the data panel on the right-hand side that it is the 4th of July, 1776, which is what a lot of people say is the birth date of America. Mars is located at 67 degrees and Uranus at 67 degrees. So he's saying that they're almost conjunct. They're almost exactly the same degree, okay? And they're separated by only 0.164 degrees each. This date, of course, was the official start of the Revolutionary War, a war of rather great significance, of course. Just make note where Pluto is located, which is 297 longitude. Pluto's symbol is located at about 11 o'clock in the sign of Capricorn. Just as we have, I'll just zoom out just so you can look at the chart while I read it to you. Just as we have longitudes to represent the position of an object on the surface of the Earth, so too we have longitudes to define and represent the positions of an object like a planet in space, referenced against the backdrop of the stars. Just as there are 360 degrees longitude for the surface of the Earth, there are the same position in space of 360 degrees longitude to define and represent a complete cycle or revolution for a planet to orbit around the sun and get back to the same position in the sky. In summation, on July 4th, 1776, once again we have Mars-Uranus conjunction in Gemini. The location of Pluto is now, which we'll get back to later, this is from a heliocentric perspective, which means a sun-centered perspective. Heliocentric or sun-centered perspective is how we see the solar system as if we were standing on the sun. Likewise, geocentric perspective is how we see the solar system as if we were standing on the Earth as we do. So basically what he's saying here is the first cycle that we were looking at was a geocentric perspective, and we were looking at these two planets from a geocentric perspective in the sign of Gemini. He then, at 84 years later, went to a heliocentric perspective on July 4th, 1776, and this is where he was able to find Mars and Uranus pretty much conjunct again in the sign of Gemini. And then we had Pluto up here in the 10th house. 84 and 3/4 year later, or one complete Uranus cycle, troops fired upon Fort Sumter in South Carolina's Charleston Harbor on April 12th, 1861. This, of course, was the start of the American Civil War. Like clockwork, we have Mars, once again, almost perfectly conjunct Uranus, with both planets located in the sign of Gemini at the exact start of the war. Mars was separated by only 3 degrees of Uranus. So we have Mars here, we have Uranus here. This is back to a geocentric perspective now. We have both of these planets in Gemini. We have the north node up in the 10th house. We can't, this is interesting, we can't, on a heliocentric perspective, we can't measure the north node from the angle of the sun, okay? The north node is only visible on a dial if we do it from a geocentric perspective. So we have pretty much the north node up in this section up here between the 10th and 11th house. We have Pluto coming around, which is currently in the 2nd house. And it is obviously the 3rd house, which we're looking at, which is Gemini for Mars and Uranus. Also note the north node is located at the 1130 position at the top of the astronomical wheel in Capricorn, which is 32 degrees away from where it was 9 rotations away, or 9 times 18.6 years. Complete rotation is 168 years earlier from the first chart, 1692. In 1692, the north node was at a celestial longitude of 320 degrees, and now 168 years and 9 complete rotations later, the north node is located at 287. The north node has an average cycle length of 18.6 years. Therefore, 9 times 18.6 equals 167.4 years, which is remarkably close to the position 168 years earlier when the 84-year cycle started in America. This is often a strong mathematical precision and synchronicity between all the planets with certain cycle lengths. And here we see that 9 rotations of the north node with an average cycle length of 18.6 years equals 2 rotations almost exactly of Uranus, which has an average cycle length of 84 years. So here he's saying 2 times 84 is basically 167 years, or 168 years. And 9 times 18.6 is 164, sorry. The next time Mars is almost conjunct Uranus is in Gemini, about 81 years later. This slight deviation from 84 years, exactly as illustrated by previous 3 84-year cycles, is due to how retrograde cycles happen to work between Mars and Uranus, this time in the geocentric perspective. On December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Due to this event, the United States was forced to enter World War II. On this date, Uranus was less than 1.5 degrees away from being in Gemini, and Mars was just 7.944 degrees away from being exactly conjunct with Uranus. Mars would be exactly conjunct with Uranus just 2 weeks later, on December 22, 1941. On December 22, 1941, the Uranus-Mars conjunction would be just 1.3 degrees from residing in Gemini. Once again, there is a high degree of synchronicity and correlation between similar planetary positions and events. So he's just saying this is another correlation between these planets being near Gemini and war events occurring. And if we look here, we have Pluto back at this house, wrong tool, and we have Mars and Uranus almost entering the 3rd house of Gemini, which, if we use Gemini as our timekeeper, this is when we'd be looking for potential war to break out. In this case, it happened just a few degrees earlier. Refer to the first panel, 1692, when Pluto was at 117 degrees and Uranus was at 61. We don't have, we have Pluto here, yep. 249 years later, in December of 1941, Pluto has now completed 1 cycle or orbit around the astronomical wheel and is located at 124 degrees longitude. This is just 6.45 degrees difference from January of 1692. In the same 249-year period, Uranus completed almost 3 full cycles around that wheel and is now 58 degrees compared to the placement 249 years earlier at 61 degrees, a difference of just 3 degrees. Basically, he's saying that whilst these are very long-term cycles, the degrees between events is very minor, okay? So it's almost 360 degrees around the circle before we get a repeating event occurring. Once again, there was a high correlation between the position of the planets and similar events on Earth. So far, we have examined 4 separate astronomical charts and timeframes, each displaying an approximate interval of 84 years or 1 complete Uranus cycle. Each of these 4 cycles to date represents a war of great significance for the United States of America. The next iteration of the 84-year Mars-Uranus conjunction and war cycle occurs in 2026. More specifically, Mars will be conjunct Uranus in Gemini on July 4th, 2026. Interestingly enough, this is exactly 250 years from the start of the Revolutionary War. Once more, we observe a high degree of planetary correlation or synchronicity in this 250-year time frame, which equals 1 complete Pluto cycle, 3 complete Uranus cycles, and 133 cycles of Mars at 1.88 years each. On July 4th, 1776, Pluto was located at 279 degrees. On July 4th, 2026, Pluto will be located at 304 degrees, or just 7 degrees difference. On July 4th, 1776, Uranus was located at 67 degrees. On July 4th, 2026, Uranus will be located at 63 degrees, or just 3 degrees difference. On July 4th, 1776, Mars was located at 67 degrees. And on July 4th, 2026, Mars will be located at 63 degrees, which is 3 degrees difference. We have basically a time period to be looking for. And it will also be exactly conjunct Uranus. So we're basically looking for this time period here, or this is just the time period that Linksy has suggested. We have the lunar node, which is basically in the 11th house. Pluto is back up around the 10th, 11th house as it was prior. And Gemini is occupied by Uranus and Mars down here. That gives us our geocentric time perspective of a war cycle potentially occurring for the United States around 2026. The planetary positions between 1692, 1776, 1861, 1941, and 2026 represent a highly correlated synchronization of the planets mentioned with similar human events occurring on Earth, the associated war cycle affecting the United States. Gann always said the 84-year Uranus cycle was indeed a very important time cycle for the United States regarding war. Based upon the cycles illustrated, the data suggests there could be a serious war or conflict in 2026 involving the United States, whether internal, external, or both. Circumstances do not need to be 100% identical, for they can rhyme or be similar in nature. This similarity could manifest itself as a significant internal conflict, such as another kind of revolution, if not major physical conflict overseas. The author is not claiming anything will happen exactly on this date, even though the astronomical data in the previous 3 cycles eerily occurred within weeks of being perfectly aligned, but that would be an interesting event indeed if it did occur on that date. However, we would expect 2026 to be a year of great concern based upon these previous astronomical cycles and correlated events until proven otherwise, meaning we should be preparing for something to occur, and if it doesn't occur, we basically count our blessings. There are also smaller cycles that are applicable to the United States, which are highly correlated with astronomical events as well. However, the object of this paper is to bring light to the upcoming major 84-year cycle when Mars is next conjunct Uranus in Gemini. So there you have it. If you want to learn more from Linksy, I do recommend, like I said, he's the one that taught me about the gold cycle, which is why I tend to be bearish into 2024, because he's given us the wheel and where to look for the gold cycle to be potentially bottoming. However, you can do now what you want with this information. I believe that Linksy is the first person to come to this sort of analysis where he's paired up Uranus and Mars. I don't think anyone else has done it. And I think that this is a very important case for the war cycle in 2026. Now, 2026, we have 2 major cycles expiring. We have the 18.6-year economic cycle, and then we have the 84-year war cycle, okay? And these 2 cycles here could mean that when the US collapses in 2026, or another major country collapses around 2026 when the global economy collapses, then we would be looking to be taken to war. So I don't want to scare you, I don't want to freak you out or anything, but I'm just showing you the statistics and the facts, okay? Now, you can do what you will with this information. If you found this information helpful, please share it with your friends and family. And also, if you want to go learn from David, L. David Linksey, go ahead and purchase his content from Sacred Science or Cosmoeconomics book library, okay? And yes, I hope this information served you well. And once we get more information, which is coming from the horse's mouth, because that's the way people like to receive it, I shall share it with you, okay? Until then, if you want to join our backend, that's where I'll be sharing content myself. If you want to learn more about this yourself, I will share it myself, and I'll leave a link below for you to join us, okay? That's all I have. Talk to you soon.